kota, Bogor sejuk dan indah. Berjuta kenangan ada, ku nikmati lengang malam dan suara gerimis hujan. Basahi jiwaku tenang. Di sini ku berdiri, di sini ku bernyanyi tentang lembaran hidup, kenangan yang takkan pernah hilang. Bogor kota terindah, teduhkan suasana hati, temukan cinta sejati dan arti bahagia. Bogor kota terindah, bersemi mimpi-mimpiku, ciptakan masa depanku, suara doa di setiap langkahku. Ku susuri jantung kota, Bogor sejuk dan indah. Berjuta kenangan ada, ku nikmati lengang malam dan suara gerimis hujan. Basahi jiwaku tenang. Di sini ku berdiri, di sini ku bernyanyi tentang lembaran hidup, kenangan yang takkan pernah hilang. Bogor kota terindah, teduhkan suasana hati, temukan
Kampus terbaik, inspirasi, tebarkan harapan. Kampus terbaik, inovasi, wujudkan impian. Kampus terbaik, integritas, kuatkan tujuan. Kampus terbaik, beri terbaik untuk negeri, untuk dunia, umat manusia dan alam semesta. Mari bersama hadirkan masa depan dalam langkah dan pikiran agar selalu terdepan, berbekal ilmu dan jiwa pengabdian. Deras arus zaman takkan tertahan, majulah melangkah, oh majulah. Kampus terbaik, inspirasi, tebarkan harapan. Kampus terbaik, inovasi, wujudkan impian. Kampus terbaik, integritas, kuatkan tujuan. Kampus terbaik, beri terbaik untuk negeri, untuk dunia, umat manusia dan alam semesta. Mari bersama hadirkan masa depan dalam langkah dan pikiran agar selalu terdepan, berbekal ilmu dan jiwa pengabdian. Deras arus zaman takkan tertahan, majulah melangkah, oh majulah. Terus berpacu dalam keunggulan, lincah pembelajar untuk kehidupan. Inilah semangat baru, tekad raih kesempatan, wujudkan kampus terbaik selamanya.
Mari bersama hadirkan masa depan dalam langkah dan pikiran agar selalu terdepan, berbekal ilmu dan jiwa pengabdian. Deras arus zaman takkan tertahan, majulah melangkah.
Mari bersama hadirkan masa depan dalam langkah dan pikiran agar selalu terdepan, berbekal ilmu dan jiwa pengabdian. Deras arus zaman takkan tertahan, majulah melangkah, oh majulah. Wujudkan kampus terbaik selamanya. Wujudkan kampus terbaik selamanya. Wujudkan kampus terbaik selamanya. Wujudkan kampus terbaik selamanya.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon. Best wishes for all of us. Welcome to the parallel session of Isotober 2026 International Conference. Isotober 2026 is organized by the Directorate of Strategic Studies and Academic Reputation of IPB University. I am Nabila, and I will be your Master of Ceremony for this parallel session under the sub-theme Agriculture, Animal Sciences, Agroforestry, and Agromaritime Innovation. I would like to thank you all for all the participants and the presenters for joining us today. And also, I want to welcome our moderator for today's session, Bapak Agus Alim Hakim, MSI. Good afternoon, Bapak.
Good afternoon, Mbak Nabila.
Okay, thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us today. All right, before we begin, please allow me to explain a few important rules for this session. The first one is please change your Zoom display name to the following format: paper ID underscore name, and the Zoom room will be attended by the MC, moderator, invited speakers, presenters, and participants. All presenters are required to attend all conference sessions, starting from the plenary session until the end of the parallel session. Co-authors are welcome to join the conference without registration, and all participants, including the presenters and audience members, are required to complete the attendance form for each session. The Google Form link will be shared in the chat box by our committee. The MC will open each presentation session, followed by the moderator who will lead the session. Each invited speaker will be allocated 15 minutes in total, consisting of 10 minutes for the presentation and 5 minutes for the Q&A session. And each presenter, other than the invited speaker, will be allocated 10 minutes in total, consisting of 5 to 7 minutes for video playback, with the remaining time for the Q&A session. Participants are kindly requested to keep their microphones muted while the presentation videos are being played. And during the Q&A session, participants may share their opinions or ask questions by raising their hand or type it in the chat box. Okay, before starting the presentation, I want to invite all the participants in this Zoom to turn on the camera because we will take some documentation for the session. Okay, I will wait a second to give you preparation. Okay. There are 2 slides in my screen. For the first slide first, 3, 2, 1. Give a big smile. Okay, for the second screen, give a big smile. 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you very much. Okay, now we proceed to the main session of this parallel session. But before that, let me introduce our moderator for today's session. Our moderator for this session is Bapak Agus Alim Hakim, SPI, MSI. Pak Agus is the lecturer in the Faculty of Fisheries and Marine Science at IPB University, and he is also an expert in several fields such as aquatic resources management, environmental science, agricultural and biological science, and also in the field of earth and planetary sciences. Okay, without further ado, I invite Pak Agus to lead our presentation session. Pak Agus, please, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Mbak Nabila, for introducing me and also explaining about the role of this session. And good morning for everyone. Welcome to this parallel session with sub-themes of agriculture, animal sciences, agroforestry, and agromaritime innovation. And yes, today I will be the moderator for this morning session. And in this morning session, we have 5 presenters, and each presenter will have 7 minutes for the presentation video, followed by 3 minutes of discussion and Q&A. And for all presenters, today we will start with first presentation. Now I would like to invite our first presenter, Pak Fauzan Taufik Ilham and Pak Priya Sembada, with the paper ID of Agro 010 and the presentation title Characteristic of Sustainable smallholder dairy farming system based on environmental pillar assessment using a typological approach. And are Pak Fauzan and team already in the meeting room?
So yeah, we are here.
Thank you, Pak. And now we will play the presentation video. Mbak Nabila, please. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. My name is Priya Sumada from IPB University Indonesia. Today, I will present our study on the characteristics of sustainable smallholder dairy farming systems based on environmental assessment using a typological approach. Indonesia faces a serious milk deficit. Domestic fresh milk production meets only about 17 to 20% of national demand. So the remaining 80% must be imported. What's more concerning is that 90% of our dairy herd is raised by smallholder farmers. These farmers typically own fewer than 4 cows, have limited land for forage and waste treatment, and face high feed costs relative to milk prices. They also struggle with poor waste management and sanitation. Therefore, the question is, how can we make these smallholder dairy systems environmentally sustainable? To answer that question, this study had 4 objectives. First, to identify the main components of environmental sustainability in smallholder dairy farms. Second, to develop a farm typology based on those components. Third, to assess sustainability scores across different farm types. And fourth, to describe the characteristics that explain why some farm types are more sustainable than others. We conducted this research in Bogor Regency, West Java from November 2024 to March 2025. We selected 100 smallholder farmers using simple random sampling from 2 dairy cooperatives. We also interviewed 7 experts from cooperatives, animal health services, and academia. We used the MESMIS framework to develop environmental sustainability indicators, which we scored from 0 to 100. Then we perform PCA, cluster analysis, correspondence analysis, and cross-Wallis test. We assess 5 environmental indicators: feed support capacity, manure utilization, availability of waste storage or biogas, residual waste quantity, and sanitation measured by total plate count of milk. We also assess characteristic indicators such as land and livestock per family worker and income diversification. PCA revealed 4 main components that explain almost 75% of environmental sustainability variance. Component 1 is farm assets, meaning land and livestock per worker. Component 2 is waste management, combining manure utilization and biogas availability. Component 3 is feed support capacity or forage availability. And component 4 is the balance between sanitation and diversification. Based on these components, we identified 4 farm typologies. The key result is that 35% of farms, specifically types S1 and S4, are environmentally more sustainable. Looking at the most sustainable associative types, which we call types A and D, we found that type A have high asset scores, meaning they are not vulnerable to bankruptcy. Type D have significantly better waste management with biogas or waste storage scores reaching 75 out of 100. Both types have optimal feed support and good sanitation, with total plate counts below 1 to 3 million. In contrast, type B and C scored much lower, especially in waste management and assets. Now, what characteristics explain this higher sustainability? Type A and D have significantly more land and more cattle. For example, type D average almost 43 cows per farm compared to only 7 cows in type C. Their milk productivity is also higher, reaching 10 liters. per cow per day. Milk sales contribute 89 to 99% of their total income, meaning fresh milk is successfully channeled to the cooperative. Additionally, they have some diversification through crop farming, which contributes 1 to 11% of income. This extra income helps them purchase concentrate feed. Interestingly, type A use less concentrate but of higher quality, resulting in the best feed conversion ratio. Type D use more concentrate but of lower quality. Forage use is optimal in both types, around 30 kilograms per cow per day, which is about 10% of body weight. Compared to a similar study conducted 10 years ago, we found that feed support and sanitation have improved. However, waste management remains relatively unchanged and is still the weakest pillar of environmental sustainability. This confirms that waste treatment should be the priority for intervention. In conclusion, environmentally more sustainable smallholder dairy farms in Bogor Regency are characterized by four things. First, large farm assets that prevent bankruptcy. Second, adequate waste management, even if simple, such as basic biogas or manure use. Third, available forage throughout the year. And fourth, good sanitation with low microbial contamination. These characteristics correlate with efficient labor. One worker handling 8 to 15 cows. High milk income contributions to the cooperative, some diversification to fund concentrate purchases, and optimal forage use. Our findings have three key implications. First, policies should be targeted per farm typology, not one size fits all. Second, we recommend promoting simple biogas or waste storage even for very small farms. Third, encouraging crop diversifications can provide capital for concentrate feed. Finally, maintaining strong cooperatives remains essential for milk marketing and input supply. Thank you for much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi.
Thank you, Pak Priya Sembada, for the nice video presentation. Now we will proceed to the Q&A session. If anyone has a question, please raise your hand or write it in the chat box. Okay, I have okay. Oh, there is one question from Pak Sigit. Which factor mostly contributes to the smallholder daily cattle business process sustainability in your studies?
Okay, thank you very much for the question, Pak Sigit, related to the most contribution for smallholder dairy cattle business. Actually, we identified some factors, but for the dominance of factors related to the asset and also the use of biogas or manure utilization, something like that. So those two factors are very important to identify and to make a scoring about the sustainability toward environmental pillars.
Okay, thank you, Pak Priya Sembada. Okay, Pak Sigit, if you have a response for the answer, you can type. Okay. Thank you, Pak Sigit, for the question. And we still have 2 more minutes if anyone have question. Or maybe I can ask a question, Pak Priya. How can the farm typology result be used to support more specific policy and technology for farmers?
Yeah, actually, when we have like policy, sometimes we use this policy to all farmers. For instance, but sometimes the situation is different between one farm and others. For example, I have 5 cows, but Pak Agus have 20 cows. The needs of our situation is quite different. So that's why we make a typology. So, for instance, the government can provide me a cow to improve the capital and to improve the milk sales. But for Pak Agus, because you have already 20 cows, the thing is maybe increasing number of cows is not the main issue for Pak Agus, but the main issue, for instance, related to the manure or to the social activities or something like that. So that's why we need to we need to implement the typology or make farmers typologies. So that's why we can promote the targeted policies for them. So this is the main idea why we use the typology for the farmers. So the government can promote the policies really targeted for them and fit for the situation among the dairy farmers.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Priya, for the answer.
Thank you,
So
Pak.
because we don't have more time, so thank you for the discussion, and we need to move to the next presentation, and we can give applause to Pak Priya. Thank you very much. And now we move to second presenters from Pak Sigit Prabowo and team with the title Preliminary Appraisal of the Drinking Water Quality in Tropical Dairy Cattle Smallholder Farm. Are Pak Sigit and teams already in the Zoom meeting?
Yes, Mr. Agus, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Pak Sigit. Okay, now we will play the presentation video.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sigit Prabowo, and I'm a representative of researcher team entitled Preliminary Appraisal of Drinking Water Quality in Tropical Smallholder Dairy Farms. As introduction, it is generally known that water quantity and quality are key determinant of dairy cattle productivity due to drinking water contribute to the improvement of feed digestion, feed metabolism, and also milk synthesis. However, water intake influenced by many factors such as their body life weight, their dry matter intake, their milk yield numbers, and also the heat stress condition of co-seeds ambience. A problem statement in this research is smallholder dairy farm in Indonesia, literally they have sufficient water quantity, but they have limited attention to water quality for their animals. This situation happened because lack of knowledge of the impact of a poor water quality will be lead to reduce feed efficiency or feed conversion ratio, and then it will be lower milk quality. Finally, it will be increase the potential risk to human health. Therefore, current research aimed to conduct a preliminary assessment of drinking water quality, but only focus on tropical smallholder dairy farm, notably co-seed located in the rich area of Indonesia. From this research, we have several expected outcomes, like improvement of water quality will be improve the co-productivity, improve the milk quality. Finally, it will be improve the public health in Indonesia from the milk product. Material method in this research were used a smallholder dairy farm located in mountainous Bogor region in Indonesia with characteristic 3 to 7 cows population and entirely Holstein breed with intensive management system or tie stall system. Entire water sample collected in the daytime precisely at 10 o'clock to 14 o'clock, directly taken from the water tank inside of co-seeds. After that, all the sample placed into the area with protected from sunlight and then immediately transported to the laboratory. There is two major parameters measured in this research. Number one is co-drinking water sensory parameter, and secondly is co-drinking water quality parameters. For the co-drinking water sensory parameters, divided into color, odor, and taste. Color subcategorized into clear, dirty, and turbid. Others subcategorized into natural, petrichor, and physic, while the taste is subcategorized into fresh, iron-like, and bitter. This water sensory parameter is very important as indicator of aesthetic and contamination status. Also, it linked with animal acceptance and water intake numbers. And that water quality analysis, the secondly, cold drinking water quality parameter, included pH, total dissolved solid, electric conductivity, salinity, oxidative reductive potential, ORP, fertility, dissolved hydrogen, specific gravity, ohmmeter, and temperature. The procedure is we use rapid water quality tester instrument, but before that we calibrate this instrument. After that we immerse the instrument to the water sample until the indicator is stable, and then record the data. This is a simplified illustration of analytic procedure. You can see in the figure 1A, B, and C. You can see in the picture. And then all of data is descriptively analysis and also compare with the another research funding related to this topic. This condition is for better comprehensive understanding and better comprehensive interpretation of water quality status in smallholder dairy farm Indonesia. Research and discussion, farm profile and water system. Average size on this research is 4 cow each farmer, and they also adopted management business with family-based labor and twice milking and thrice feeding daily. Entire water source is from surface water like creek or source from springs in the near of their cow seats. Next, farm profile and water system. There is 3 types of water system adopted in this farmer samples. Number 1 is plastic bucket, then this is dominant, and number 2 is concrete roof, and number 3 is pipeline system, the most modern one. And you can see from this concrete roof there is 2 types. There is 2 type models. One is cubical and the second is half spheres of concrete roof. Next, sensory test results, or in this case is turbidity. Fortunately, there is 0% of turbid waters categorized, but there is 75% classified as dirty and 25% classified as clear. So the water turbidity results, sensory test in this research is dominated by dirty. Therefore, high turbidity indicates presence of dissolved contaminants. Then sensory test results, taste and color. The taste is 50% like iron-like, and then 37.5% fresh, 12.5% is bitter. While for the others, 37.5 smelly natural, as well as petrichor, and then 25% smelly fizzy. This situation implicates that strong indication of chemical imbalance on the drinking water quality for smallholder for cow reared in the smallholder dairy farm in Indonesia. And this is the water quality parameter results. It's found that 6 parameters within acceptable range included total dissolved solids, electric conductivity, salinity, fertility, specific gravity, and ohmmeter. While there is 4 parameters outside the standard range, comprise pH, ORP, hydrogen dissolved, and temperature. From this table, we can interpret that basic mineral balance is generally acceptable, but we should focus and more detail in pH. As a conclusion, drinking water quality in smallholder dairy farm in the rich area of Indonesia is still suboptimal. Therefore, we should improve some critical priority parameter. In this case is pH, taste, and odor is urgently to be improved. Thank you very much for your attention and for your patience. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Pak Sigit, for the interesting video presentation. And now we will move to discussion section. Please, if anyone has a question, you can raise your hand or write in the chat box. Okay, we have one question from Pak Priya Sembada. Nice presentation, Pak Sigit. how the water can influence the co-productivity or milk quality, and how you suggest farmer to improve the water quality.
Oke, thank you Mr. Agus dan Mr. Priya Sembada for the question. Interesting question. I directly answer is the simple answer from this question is we understand that the milk is dominated by water composition in their ingredients. So the condition of drinking water quality will be directly affect to their productivity or milk quality. We also understand that daily need for cow in drinking water is according to some reference is 120 liter for almost 30 liter milk yield. So we can understand that there is comparison 1:4 ratio for each liter. So we from this situation we can understand that the importance of water quantity for the improvement the productivity of cow. So from the quality, we also understand as well that better quality of drinking water will improve the water intake of the cow. So it will be simultaneous between quality and quantity of water quality in the improvement of milk productivity. That is the first question. And the second question is how you suggest farmer to improve the water quality. So in this case, because according to our found in this research, mostly the parameter pH, taste, and odor is the parameter should be improved promptly. So I can give some suggestion for the smallholder dairy farm in Indonesia to make some before we serve the water drinking to the cow, we should make some treatment first. Like we can make some filtration or something like that before the milk is give to the cattle. Thank you very much. That's my response.
Okay, thank you, Pak Sigit, for the answer. Pak Priya, okay, thank you. This study also new for me, so thank you, Pak Sigit, for the clear answer. It's new for me, and I got something information today. Okay, so since we have limited time, we need to move to next presenter. Before we move, we can give Pak Sigit applause for nice presentation today. Thank you, Pak Sigit. So we will move to third presenter, Ibu Fairuz Hisana Hibatullah and team with the title Harnessing Acid and Salinity Tolerance Symbiotic Nitrogen Fixing Bacteria and PGPR to improve soybean growth in degraded soils. So, are Bu Fairuz and team already in the meeting room?
Yes, I'm here as the representative of my team.
Okay, thank you, Bu Fairuz. Now we move to video presentation. Please, Mbak Nabila.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning and greetings to all of participants. My name is Fairuz Hisana Hibatullah, and the title of my presentation is Harnessing Acid and Salinity Tolerant Symbiotic Nitrogen Fixing Bacteria and Plant Growth Promoting Rhizobacteria to Improve Soybean Growth in Degraded Soil. So the background of this research is the demand for soybean in Indonesia continues to increase in line with the growth population in the country's population growth. Black soybean as soil building crop is an important food crops with high nutritional contents, but the productivity is low due to the agroecology and the degraded soil, such as saline soil and acidic soil in Indonesia. So the approach that can be employed is using the symbiotic nitrogen fixing bacteria and plant growth promoting rhizobacteria as biofertilizer, which are capable to improve the soil health, fertilizer efficiency, and soybean productivity in problematic soil such as saline and acidic soil. So the research was conducted in Soil Biology Laboratory, Faculty of Agriculture, and CV Bintang Asri Al-Tauli in December 2025 to February 2026. And this is the equipment and the material used in this research. And the experiment consists of 3 stages, namely the first one is acid tolerance test of SNFB and PGPR isolates. And the second is salinity tolerance test of SNFB and PGPR isolates. And the last one is biological assay test of acid and salinity tolerance inoculants on black soybean plants. So this is the for the stage 1 is the treatment for acid tolerance test of SNFB and PGPR isolates. The first factor is type of isolates and the second factor is acidity level, and same as for the PGPR isolates. And for the stage 2 is the salinity tolerance test of SNFB and PGPR isolates. The first factor is type of isolate and the second factor is salinity level. And for the PGPR is same as the SNFB. And this is the treatment for the stage 3.1 bioassay of acid tolerant inoculants on black soybean plants. The first factor is acidity level combined with SNFB, and the second factor is soybean varieties. And for the stage 3.2 bioassay of salt tolerant inoculant on black soybean plants, the first factor is salinity level combined with SNFB and PGPR, and the second factor is soybean varieties. And this is the research finding. The figure 1 is growth rate of an SNFB 7 days after inoculation at various pH level, and for the figure 2 is the growth rate of PGPR at various pH level. So the bacteria have optimal growth condition at a natural like acidic pH around 6 to 7 in highly acidic soil conditions. The growth rate decreases due to the increased concentration of hydrogen ions, which disrupt the stability of enzymes and cell membranes. And this is the growth rate of SNFB and PGPR 7 days after inoculation at various salinity level. Increased salinity reduce SNFB growth through osmotic stress and ionic disruption that inhibit metabolism, while PGPR also decreases but exhibit a higher tolerance. And this is the plant growth response to acid stress. The table 1, the plant height of soybean plants at 28 days after sowing under acidic condition. So the plant height occurred at a pH of 6 with the highest value reaching 43.57 centimeter in the BS99 variety. This indicates that near neutral pH conditions support microbial activity and nutrient availability, particularly biologically fixed nitrogen. And this is the effect of SNFB on the root length, show a decreasing trend under SNFB treatment, particularly at low pH level. At pH 7 without SNFB, root length reached approximately 18 to 19 centimeter, but with SNFB it decreased to approximately 6 to 11 centimeter. This indicates that the interaction between microbes and plant was not yet optimal, possibly due to adaptation stress or microbial competition in the rhizosphere. And this is the plant growth response to salinity stress. The first one is in the plant height of soybean plants. And the application of the SNFB and PGPR consortium was able to restore plant growth under saline conditions at a salinity of 4 decisimal per meters. Plant height increased from 21 to 27 centimeters to 26 to 30 centimeters following inoculation. This indicates that the microbial consortium is capable of mitigating the negative effects of salinity and plant growth. And this is the parameter for the root length. High salinity inhibits root growth, but microbial inoculation can improve this situation. At a salinity of 4 decisimal per meters, root length increased to 13 centimeters in the BS114 variety following microbial application. This indicates the microbe plays a role in enhancing phosphorus availability, indole acetic acid hormone production, and the regulation of osmotic pressure, thereby supporting root system development. So this is the conclusion. The growth of SNFB and PGPR is influenced by acidity and salinity level, with optimal conditions occurring at natural pH and low salinity. PGPR exhibit greater tolerance to abiotic stress than SNFB. The application of SNFB and PGPR is capable of enhancing the growth of soybean shoots and roots under stressful conditions, although their effectiveness decreases under extreme stress conditions. Microbial consortia have the potential to act as biostimulants in enhancing soybean productivity on degraded soil, with success being highly dependent on the suitability of the isolates and environmental condition. Thank you for your attention, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Bu Fairuz, for the great video presentation. And let's do discussion. Okay, we already have one question from Bu Fitri. Nice presentation, Bu Fairuz. And my question is why you choose to utilize SNFB and PGPR inoculation to address acid and salinity stress in your study?
Okay, thank you, Bu Fitri, for the question. So, why I choose symbiotic nitrogen fixing bacteria and PGPR bacteria? Because both of these microorganisms has the complementary roles in supporting plant growth, and especially under this degraded soil, like acid and saline soil. And for the SNFB, it's essential for this bacteria can fix the nitrogen from the atmospheric and make it available into forms that can be taken by the plants. And because of that, the nitrogen nutrition in plants will be improved and make it the plant growth will be better. And while the PGPR have the benefit, PGPR can produce the growth hormones, like indole acetic acid, and can reduce the stress tolerance. And then this PGPR, especially for phosphate solubilizing bacteria, can solubilize the phosphate in the soil. So I think that is the why I choose this bacteria for my study. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bu Fairuz, for the answer. Bu Fitri, do you have any response? Okay, let's waiting for Bu Fitri respond, and then we move to second question from Bu Alfi. Where did the SNFB using in the test come from? From the normal soil or from acid or saline soil?
Okay, thank you, Alfie, for the question. So the SNFB I isolate and characterize is from the normal soil, but after I characterize for the biochemical, and then after that we do the test in saline liquid medium and acid liquid medium. So the result of this SNFB is from the test from the acid and saline liquid medium.
Okay, thank you, Bu Fairuz, for the answer. Bu Alfi, do you have any response?
Okay, thank you. No,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you for Bu Fairuz for the nice answer, and I think everything is clear. And because we have limited time, so we need to move to the next presenter. And everyone, let's give applause to Bu Fairuz. Okay, thank you very much, Bu Fairuz. And we will move to next presenter, Bu Sukartini Mertia Anugrah and team, with the title The Establishment of Seed Germination Methods for 5 Sections of Wild Bananas Musa acuminata. Are Bu Sukartini and teams already in the Zoom meeting?
Yes, I'm here, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Bu. Okay, let's move to video presentation. Mbak Nabila, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity. I am Sukartini from PRIN. Today, I would like to present our study entitled The Establishment of Seed Germination Methods for 5 Accessions of Wild Banana Musa acuminata from Sumatra. This research was conducted collaboratively by PRIN, IPB University, and PSMRSTU Bangladesh. White bananas are important genetic resources for banana breeding, especially for pest and disease resistance. However, their seed germination remains low due to physical and physiological dormancy. This study aimed to characterization of seed anatomical to determine the first count and final count of germination and to identify the best combination of light intensity and media humidity for 5 wild banana accessions from Sumatra. For materials and methods, the first experiment focused on seed anatomical characterization and to describe seed morphology, including seed shape, size, and longitudinal internal structures to better understand anatomical variation among accessions. The second experiment using a completely randomized design to know the first and final count, and germination was observed daily for 60 days based on the emergence of normal sprout. The third experiment used a factorial RCBD with 2 factor 5 accession and 6 germination conditions combining different level of light intensity and media humidity. Data were analyzed using ANOVA followed by DMRT at a 5% significant level. 6 treatment combinations were applied using 100% or 50% sunlight with 70%, 80%, and 90% media humidity. For seed anatomy of 5 wild Musa acuminata, all accessions shared similar seed structures, including a T-shaped embryo, but differed in seed shape and size. Thick seed coat may contribute to dormancy by limiting water and oxygen uptake, while embryo maturity also affects germination success. First count and final count. The first count occurred on day 16, while the final count occurred on day 26 after sowing. SPN1 and LNT1 showed the best germination performance, whereas SGR1 didn't produce normal sprouts within 60 days. SPN1 also showed a stable increase in germination based on nonlinear regression analysis. Germination result. Germination was strongly influenced by light intensity, media humidity, and accession type. SPN1 and LT1 performed best under full sunlight, while Microcarpa, DMS1, and SCR1 germinated better under 50% shade with 90% humidity. SPN1 achieved the highest germination percentage at 92% under the C50 and K90 treatment. Vigor index and growth simultaneity. SPN1 showed the highest vigor index and the best growth simultaneity across most treatments, especially under high humidity conditions. LNT1 also performed well under full sunlight, while the other accessions showed synchronized growth mainly under shaded and highly humid conditions. This result indicates that humidity is a major factor affecting germination in white bananas. Discussion. Differences in light response among accessions are likely associated with their natural habitats. SPN1 and LNT1 originate from open or forest edge environmental and are therefore more adapted to full sunlight conditions. In contrast, Microcarpa DMS1 and SCR1 are associated with close forest habitats and prefer shaded environment. Conclusion. In conclusion, this study demonstrated that seed morphology varies among Musa acuminata subspecies, although all accessions share similar embryo structures. The first count was determined on day 60, while the final count was established on day 26 after sowing. SPN1 and LNT1 germinated best under full sunlight with high humidity, whereas Microcarpa, DMS1, and SCR1 performed better under shaded conditions with 90% humidity. Overall, SPN1 was identified as a superior accession based on germination percentage, vigor index, and growth simultaneity. This finding provide a foundation. I think enough for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bu Sukartini, for the interesting video presentation. And now we will proceed to the discussion session. If anyone has question, please raise your hand or write in the chat box. Okay. I have a question, Bu Sukartini, but I'm sorry if I miss in the presentation. What germination method is most suitable for different wild banana seed accessions?
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir.
Yeah, my question is what germination method is most suitable for different wild banana seed accession?
Yes, the method suitable for I think to wild banana seed. Yes.
Okay. And yeah, how do light intensity and media humidity affect with banana seed germination? Sukartini?
Yes, the humidity and light different from different effect for the the accession of white bananas. In this case, the accession of SPN1, LT1, more adapted with more light, yeah. And for Microcarpa, SGL1 and TMS1 is more adapted with shaded habitat from. It is suitable with in the forest that SPN1 and LT1 it is commonly found in side of a river, and this area is more open. Yes, and in the jungle, Microcarpa SCR1 and TMS1 is more in inside on more shaded habitat. That is it.
Okay, thank you, Bu Sukartini, for the
Yes.
detailed answer. And does anyone have another question? Okay, maybe there is no question, and we have also limited time. So thank you very much, Bu Sukartini, for your presentation and your answer. Let's give applause to Bu Sukartini. And then we can move to the next presenter, the last presenters. It's Budian Vita Lestari and team with the title of Microplastic Pollution and Fish Histopathology in Pulau Baai, Bengkulu. Are Budian Vita Lestari and team already here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Bu Dian. Okay, let's move to the video presentation. Mbak Nabila, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity for me. Today, I'm going to present about microplastic pollution and fish histopathology in Pulau Baai, Bengkulu Province. I am Dian Vita Lestari, doctoral student in biology, Faculty of Biology, Universitas Gadjah Mada, and this is our research team. We are from Department of Biology, Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Science, Universitas Bengkulu. The background of our research is plastic waste is an environmental pollutant that accumulates in aquatic ecosystem, and then microplastic are the most abundant form of marine debris, measuring less than 5 millimeters. More than 690 species in marine water is microplastic, according to Zhang 2020. And then according to Kiao et al. 2019, microplastic can cause toxicity, oxidative stress, metabolic disorders, and behavioral change in fish. The potential threats of microplastic to animal and human health is the global status of microplastic in fish is increasing concerning in the last decades. And the microplastic engaged by fish increase the risk of human health through fish consumption. So the aim of our study is was to analyze microplastic contamination in fish organs and histological analysis of gill organs in fish in Pulau Baai in Bengkulu Province. This is the methods that we use in our research. This is the detail of our methods that we use in our research. And then now is we can see the result of our research. In our research, we found three types of microplastic in fish gills. There are filament, and then film, and fragment. And we can find the types of microplastic such as a pellet. And then the figure 2 and figure 3, we can see the microplastic color percentage in fish organs. We can see the dominant color is black and transparent up to 39%, and then blue and brown and last red color. And then microplastic in fish gill we can find in 4 species, tongkol, selar, and gulama, also KPKP. We can see in here the highest microplastic is tongkol, and then followed by KPKP, and then gulama, and the last is selar fish. And then this is a microplastic shape comparison in fish gills. Figure 4, we can see that filament. Filament is was the most dominant microplastic shape found in fish gills across all 4 species, with Tongkol recording the highest count up to 95 particle per grams. And then these findings is consistent with studies from several studies from coastal fish in China, and then the Red Sea, and then the Mediterranean Sea. So, and then this is a histological section of fish gills tissue at 100 magnification, and then we can see in here A, B. This is the gills of tongkol fish. And then C, D, this is gills of the slar, and then E, F, this is gills of gulama fish, and G, H, it is gills of KPKP fish. We can see in here that we can see the some alteration in fish gills, like secondary lamella fusion, and then there are hyperplasia, and also shortening of secondary lamella, and also but in tip secondary lamella. We can see some alteration in several fish in Pulau Bai, and then the point of our research is damage in fish gills, like caused by multiple pollutants, and microplastic is one of key factor that can cause the some alteration in gill structure. And then fish accumulate microplastic in their bodies, prolonged exposure, which might impair physiology or survival of their fish. And then in our research is finding show no more severe damage, but further in-depth of research is still necessary, and then long-term consumption of microplastic contaminated fish maybe can cause microplastic accumulation in humans. So this study serves as a reference for broader global research on microplastic pollution. So the conclusion of our research is species and microplastic in all four species, tongkol, Eutinus affinis, Selar, Crumenophthalmus, and then Junius sp, and Scatophagus argus contain microplastic in their gills. And then dominant shapes is filaments, and then followed by fragments and films. Abundance range from 98 till 208 7 particles per gram, and then the highest mean in tongkol up to 148 particles per grams. And then the black and transparent colors particles is the most commonly identified colors, each accounting for 39% of total microplastic found in fish organs. And then gill damage observed the hyperplasia, epithelial lifting, alveolar shortening and fusion, and also edema and lysis indicate that there are environmental stress in Bengkulu coastal waters. And then this is it's enough in our research. So thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Bu Dian, for the beautiful video presentation. And now we move to discussion section, and wow, we already have one question from Pak Saitul Fakhri. Bu Dian, I like tuna fish tongkol a lot. Me too, Pak. Since in your study, the concentration of MP was the highest, whether MP transferred to the tuna meat as well, danger to our health. And the second question, what is the effect of MP to human? Okay, Bu Dian, please.
Do you hear my voice?
Yes.
Thank you for your question, Pak Saitul Fahri. For tuna, highest we can found the microplastic, but we can only observed in gills and also in several organ, but in meat we can uh, we, kita belum observasi lebih dalam untuk bagian otot, akan tetapi mikroplastik itu bisa masuk ke dalam otot seperti itu. Nah, kemudian apa efek dari effect of microplastic in human? Microplastic can disrupt for our hormone and then our physiology, like such as stress in our body. And the microplastic has a long-term effect for our body. Like it.
Okay, thank you, Bu Dian.
Can I
Pak
comment?
Saitul, you have yes,
Yes.
please.
Can I comment? Yes. Thank you, Pak Agus. Budian, this is very good. I think it's very interesting experiment in your study. Plastic everywhere. We use all plastic in our life, and I've been scared because I love tuna a lot, and I always eat tuna if there is a chance to have that. But if it is transferred to tuna meat, so it's a bit difficult for us. So can we? How can we notice that the tuna contaminated with MP or not? I mean, in the application, let's say I want to buy tuna in the market. So how can I notice this tuna is contaminated with MP or not? Something like that. Well, if it is this information is very good for us, So I don't want to buy this one. I have to buy maybe from the color, probably color. Maybe from the gills or insang, yeah. You can see from insang maybe probably the color. If color like this, or this a lot of microplastic on it. Is like this, this is good, or red maybe it's good. I think it's very interesting. Or maybe you study not so far yet. I think it's very interesting. I'd like your answer about this, Dian. Thank you, Pak Agus.
Okay, thank you, Pak Saitul. It's a nice question. I think it's also important information for me. Okay,
Yeah.
Bu Dian,
You love
please.
this as well. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Pak Saito Fahri. So microplastic is the size goes less than 5 millimeters. So we can notice with the meat or from organs like gills or others, or for skin. So we can kita tidak tahu gitu bagaimana untuk membedakan ikan yang sudah terkontaminasi mikroplastik dengan yang tidak, karena
Next project, Bu.
mikroplastik yang sangat kecil ini. Oke. Sorry moderator, I answer in English in Indonesia.
Yeah, it's okay, Bu.
It's okay, Bu. As long as I understand, it's okay, Bu.
Oke, jadi memang seperti itu Bapak. Jadi mungkin untuk next kita akan kaji lebih dalam apakah memang mikroplastik ini akan mempengaruhi bagaimana tampakan morfologi dari beberapa ikan yang sudah terkontaminasi seperti itu.
Okay, thank you, Bu Dian and Pak Saitul. It's a nice discussion in this session, and yeah, I think microplastic it's very hot issue now, not only in Indonesia, also in another country. And we have another question, but we have limited time. Maybe Pak or Bu Afif, maybe Pak Afif, you can talk with Bu Dian in personal way. And maybe this is the end of our session, the morning session, but let's give applause to Bu Dian for the nice presentation today. Okay, thank you to all presenter and participant for the excellent presentation and discussion. And I hope everyone enjoyed the session and found it informative. And we will meet again in the next session, afternoon session. And I will give floor to Mbak Nabila if you have some information. And for everyone, have a nice day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak.
All right. Thank you very much, Pak Gus. We are truly pleased to have you as our moderator for today's session. However, we will not say goodbye just yet, as we still have one more session together this afternoon. And ladies and gentlemen, we will now take a short break until 1:30 p.m. 1:30 p.m. So we will expect you to rejoin this meeting room, the same meeting room as today, as this session at 1:30 p.m. And before leaving the room, please make sure that you have completed the attendance form.
Oh, you have done it.
And the Google Form link will be shared by our committee in the chat box. Okay, we'll see you again at 1:30 p.m. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Have a nice day.
Where can we get this link, Bu?
Let's introduce myself first. My name is Fatima.
Maybe link. Oh my goodness. Okay, good.
I have shared the link at the chat box,
Okay,
Pak.
thank you,
Okay.
Pak. Thank you, Bu.
Thank you.
Kususuri jantung kota Bogor sejuk dan indah.